Okay, so in many cases, we get to find that a number of young women, or women per se, they get to be on contraceptives, but at the end of the day, they get to find themselves pregnant. This raises a lot of concerns when it comes to what they should do next. Is it that they get rid of the pregnancy or they keep the pregnancy? At times they get to think of, maybe should I go through an abortion, or should I go through a safe abortion, or a self-performed abortion? Well, today's discussion is very interesting, and we have interesting people on the panel. Good afternoon. My name is Margaret
Good
Sulemani,
afternoon.
and you can go ahead.
Hi, Margaret. It's quite an interesting conversation that we had today. And
Hi.
today's discussion is um, when contraceptives fail, let's talk safe abortion. And I'm sure this show will have to answer all those questions that a lot of people have heard about abortion. What is it about and all that? And well, we are here to going to talk about it today. My name is Elliot Helper Kupfuma, and I'm from Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean guy on the show.
We are glad to have you on the show, Elliot. And just to get right back into what we're talking about, so this show, as we all know, this show, we are focusing on the Be Safe campaign, and this campaign is supported by Amplify Change under the Youth Advocacy Project that focuses on strengthening and amplifying the voices and technical capacity of adolescents and young people and their communities to meaningfully engage in policies and programs that affect their health and rights. Interesting, right?
It is, it is. And at this point, please allow me to just introduce our guests so that we know who they are, which country are they from, what do they do. So yeah, maybe by just a random selection, maybe Martha, you can start by introducing yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Martha Chavinga. I'm coming from Kawe, Central Province of Zambia. I'm a registered nurse, midwife. So by being virtue of a midwife, I'm a family planning provider. I'm also a CAP provider, meaning that I'm able to provide abortion services to anyone who seeks to have them. Thank you.
Interesting. All right, let's hear from Besa.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be part of this conversation today. So, as introduced, I'm Vesa Mwansa. I'm a lawyer by profession, but my work has been centered more around advocacy campaigns, lobbying, and also speaking about the law. So, like I've indicated, my work has been with different civil society organizations that work around advancing women's rights, advancing the voices of young people and children. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Interesting, and thank you so much for the introductions. Well, Sister Martha from Mahatma Gandhi Clinic in Kabwe, and there's someone also a human rights and gender advocate. And just to ensure that everyone is able to fully participate and never leaving anyone behind, we have John Chulu, who is our sign language interpreter, and let's dive right into the discussions of the day. I think, Margaret, you might have one question or two that you want to just hear out this conversation.
Elliot, today I have a number of questions, and looking at the facts that we have a number of people, I mean, we have the advocate, we have a healthcare provider, and it's just so interesting because I feel like most of the questions that we've had on contraceptives, on abortion, they are all going to be responded to today. Because when you look at young people, you know, we have so much information. I feel like the information that we have at times, it's too much to handle because we get to use it in a certain way instead of using it in a way that is supposed to be used. Let us look at the topic that we're looking at today. when contraceptives fail. We're talking about safe and unsafe abortion. So let's just dive into this conversation. Like, I would like Martha to just help us understand what safe and unsafe abortion is. Martha, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So, I'll start with safe abortion. Safe abortion is terminating or ending a pregnancy using the recommended method, and the method should be provided by a trained health personnel and in a designated health facility. So, unsafe abortion will be obviously the opposite of just what I've just said. So, if someone conducts an abortion using a method that is not recommended, mostly by World Health Organization, it becomes unsafe. If you have someone who's providing that service who's not trained, obviously it's an unsafe abortion. If you are conducting that abortion in a place which is not designated, in a place which is not a health facility, obviously it also becomes an unsafe abortion. So, Margaret, that's what it means when we say a safe abortion. It means that it has to have the three things that I've mentioned. It needs to be a recommended method, and then it needs to be done by someone who's trained, a health provider who's trained, and it also has to be done in a designated place, and that has to be a health facility with meeting all the standards that are required when providing an abortion. So the opposite of that is unsafe. Thank you, Margaret.
Interesting. We have just got a definition of what it means from a clinical perspective, or from maybe, let's say, from a medical perspective. But it's also, this conversation is balanced. We do have the guys who are there in the medical field, and then we also have the guys that are there from the policy and the law perspective. So I think we would want to understand what does the law say about abortion. Maybe this question is for you, Besa, to just, try to enlighten us. What does the law say about abortion? And maybe before we get there, just to spice up, maybe just to provoke our thinking along, abortion policies within the whole southern region are different. If you go to South Africa, abortion 16 is allowed. If it's in Zimbabwe, it's allowed on certain bases. I think there are like 3 provisions within the constitution, which is number 1, maybe someone is raped. Number 2 is either there's a complication that's going to be a threat to the mother who is carrying the baby, or the baby in the womb. And in those provisions, abortion is allowed. It's not only because you just got pregnant and you want to do abortion, but this is in the context of Zimbabwe. And when we're looking into it, trying to advocate for free abortion, safe abortion for adolescents and all this, there's an argument that came. I know you're going to respond on what does the law says, maybe in the Zambian context, but maybe just to give you this context, there is a conversation that was saying abortion is not allowed in Zimbabwe because every child has a right, whether born or unborn, they have a right to live, right? And then there's also other rights that are there to say, my body, my rights, and I have a right to take an action on whatever that develops on my body. So if I feel like there's a fetus that's developing on my body, I should have the right to terminate. So just to give you that context, maybe you can just respond what the law says about abortion, and maybe just unpack some of the things that might, emanate from this conversation.
Thank you so much, Elliot. So I think to start, I will speak to why we have laws. And I'm glad that you mentioned that in the SADC region, each country has specific laws that speak to this particular issue. So I'll just take the time to also say laws and policies are important. One of the roles that laws play is they regulate human conduct. Elliot, you can imagine a society where there are no rules and laws. It would basically be a jungle. Then everyone would be free to do whatever it is that they want to do. without, boundaries and perimeters. So one of the roles of the law is to regulate human conduct. The second is to protect human rights. So I'm glad that you also already brought in the aspect of, the right of the child, then there's the right of the mother, and there are all these other rights that are centered on the issue of abortion. So laws also play a role of protection, promotion and protection of human rights. So I will bring it down to the Zambian context. For Zambia, the starting point is the constitution. One of the unique features of the constitution is that it's the supreme law of the land. So all other laws are supposed to be aligned with the provisions of the constitution. So when it comes to our Zambian constitution, we have different articles, but of particular interest for this discussion is Article 12.2 of the Zambian constitution. That states, as I quote, no person shall deprive an unborn child of the life by termination of pregnancy, except in accordance with the conditions laid down by an act of parliament. So we see that our constitution actually upholds the life of this unborn child. But on the other end, also, it gives leeway to circumstances that can allow for the termination of an unborn child. And in essence, the constitution is making reference to one particular law that speaks to the issues of termination of pregnancy, which is the Termination of Pregnancy Act. So that is the law that we use here in Zambia to outline what then are the circumstances in which this particular woman can be able to access a safe abortion. I think Sister Martha has already distinguished the two. So the reference that we're making to the Termination of Pregnancy Act is for a safe abortion. This is the one that is done in the medical, performed by medical personnel, and it's done in a health center, a hospital, a clinic. So the reference that we're looking at now is then what are these circumstances that allow for one to be able to access a safe abortion. So I'm going to make reference to the Termination of Pregnancy Act. It's a 1972 act, by the way. So it's not a recent law. It's been around for a very long time, and we've not had any amendments to this law. So it is as is since 1972. So with the Termination of Pregnancy Act, firstly, the law provides that there are 4 circumstances that allow for a termination of pregnancy. The first being the risk to the life of the pregnant woman. So if it has been determined that this pregnancy will cause a risk to the pregnant woman, this is a circumstance that allows for one to access a safe abortion. The second circumstance is the risk to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman. So issues around mental health, issues around the physical well-being of this particular pregnant woman is taken into account on this circumstance. So if there'll be a risk to her physical and mental health, then this is a ground in which one individual can actually access a safe abortion. The third one is risk of injury to the physical or mental health of existing children of the pregnant woman. So this one extends it. We're not just making reference to the pregnant woman, but also if in that particular situation, this woman already has other children, and this unborn child poses a risk of physical or mental health to the already existing children, then this also can be a ground for this particular woman to be able to access a safe abortion. The last ground is where there's substantial risk to the unborn child. The chances that this unborn child may suffer from a physical or a mental abnormality, that also is a ground that can be used for one to access a safe abortion. In addition to the Termination of Pregnancy Act, there are also other laws that speak to termination of a pregnancy. In Zambia, we have what is called the Gender Equity and Equality Act. This particular law has provisions that speak to sexual and reproductive health of women. So under this Gender Equity and Equality Act, we have a provision that allows for a woman to be able to decide whether or not to actually have this child. However, the Gender Equity and Equality Act also makes reference back to the Termination of Pregnancy Act. Like I said, this is the main law that has provisions and also circumstances that permit for a woman to be able to access a safe abortion. Then we also have the Penal Code. So here in Zambia, the
Okay,
Penal Code.
before you go ahead, sorry, Bessa, before you go ahead, maybe we can move to other questions so that we keep moving with the questions. But
Okay.
that explanation, sure, that explanation is well detailed. You know, it's very important even as we talk about safe abortion, because a number of us as young people, we don't really know where to access these services. Sometimes we might have the information, but we don't really know the implications that may come after we get to do it on ourselves. And in most cases, we don't even know that there's a law that says, or there's an act that says there are certain conditions that one has to go through before they can actually access abortion services. So I will run back to Martha. To Sister Martha, rather, I'll run back to you. You mentioned you gave us a very detailed explanation of safe and unsafe abortion, what it really is. And you mentioned where we can actually get these services. But then my question is, how can young people access these safe abortion services? You know, when we talk about safe abortion and unsafe abortion, you're going to find that a number of young people are performing it on themselves, not really, not really going to the health facility or anything. But then my question to you is, how can a young person like as Margaret, how can I access these safe abortion services?
Thank you so much, Margaret. And just a matter of concern, the leading cause of maternal deaths in young women, mostly it comes from unsafe abortions. So these safe abortions, they're done in most of these health facilities nearby. So what a young person needs to do, what this young woman needs to do is just go to a health facility and then speak to someone. I know most of our youths are scared of being judged, and hence they feel like they are better off doing an abortion in the community. But we've heard that the leading cause of maternal deaths in our young women is the unsafe abortion. And I think this is the reason why I think government has brought out this service in many health facilities. So what these young women need to do, sometimes I've seen a young woman being escorted by a partner who's impregnated her, and then when they reach a health facility, because they feel that it's a hidden kind of somehow they feel like it's a shameful thing to do. And then when they come, they go to the corners of health facilities, trying to ask in the corners, where can we get this service? Please introduce us to someone. We'll pay something. The young people need to know is that these services are available in most of these health facilities. They just need to speak up and go to a health facility, talk to someone, and they'll direct them to someone who's providing these services free of charge. So the issue of being judged, I think, is the one that comes up mostly in these young people, and we always encourage them to speak out. And one thing that they need to know is in most health facilities, we have these we've put in, young people we call peer educators. They are all over in the health facilities, and they are there to fast track any young person that they see in the facility. So those are the best people that they can talk to. And each health facility has a focal point person for the adolescents. They can just try to find out where this person is, because they are found at the facility mostly on every working day from 7 to about 16, 17. So if they can just go to a health facility, talk to someone, they will be able to access this service, which is there for them, and it's free of charge.
Elliot, before you come in, I know you want to come in right now. Before you just come in, I have a follow-up question for Sister Martha. So you've mentioned to say in these health facilities, there are peer educators who are there just to, you know, help these young people want to access these services that are valuable for them, especially the abortion services. But then let us look at something. I feel like this should have been something that I should have asked before I even started asking you questions about safe abortion, and safe abortion. In a preamble we had where I said a number of young people or a number of women, they get to find that they are on contraceptives, but at the end of the day, they get to find themselves pregnant. So now I would like to get it from you, Sister Martha, you being a health practitioner. What makes contraceptives fail?
Thank you so much, Margaret. As we, what happens when someone comes to access family planning, what we do is offer counseling first before we provide the service. So when we explain method by method, we always explain that these methods are not 100%, but they work 99.9%. So there's that 0.01%, even after correct use. But I think we've seen what causes mostly for these contraceptives to fail. It's mostly, I think, the failure to follow instructions, the fear of maybe the side effects. If one experiences those side effects, I'll give an example. If someone is taking the oral contraceptives, the pills, they start experiencing these side effects. What do? If I feel this headache, if I get nausea, if I maybe vomit a bit, they tend to stop. And then you know that once you stop, obviously you expect that method to fail. And then the other thing is under the failure to follow instructions, you find that you give them, if it's the injectables, you give them that they need to come after 3 months on a particular date, because most probably they were engaged in school or something, they come a week or 2 weeks late. Obviously expect a method to fail. So mostly what causes, I think, failure is just failure to just follow the instructions. And yes, I talked about the 0.01% failure rate, even after correct use of a method. But mostly, I think what we've discovered is just the failure to follow the instructions.
Thank you so much. Elliot, you can go ahead
it's
now.
Quite interesting. It's quite interesting discussion. And let's not forget that we also have online viewers, the online community, the online province that's following through this conversation. And we want to urge them to just put the comments and what they think or any questions that they feel like they need answers from this conversation. But, I'm only intrigued on the issues to do with the law because I think everything centers around what does the law say. And maybe to look into some of these things from a perspective of what are the consequences, what are the legal consequences, what are the legal provisions. And maybe my next question is going to beg to Vesta to say, you as an individual, you're someone who interacts a lot with a number of people on a regular basis. And we have heard from Martha that there are provisions, there are services that are there. The law says there are provisions that are there that can allow for safe abortion. But we've seen people, resorting to unsafe abortion practices. What could be the reason? From a legal perspective, what could be the reason? And maybe just to answer that question, we might also get to a point where probably we might not understand the law implications of unsafe abortion, self-practices, but the law say about safe abortion and practices in the context of Zambia?
Thank you, Elliot. So one of the things I should mention is that in as much as we have the laws in place, we still have a knowledge gap. Very few young people actually know of the existence of the Termination of Pregnancy Act. So if you had to just randomly ask people on the street if they know about the TOP, in short, that's what it's called, abbreviated as TOP, maybe just 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 100 would actually know that we have a law that permits safe abortion under prescribed circumstances. So there's a very huge knowledge gap on the law. Secondly, there's also a knowledge gap about service delivery. Very few young people actually know that this service is provided at hospitals, clinics, and health centers. Most of them think the hospital or the clinic is just for different diseases or illnesses. And so they might actually not know that this service is provided adequately in these service points. So that's also another issue. Then there's the issue of stigma. Sister Martha had mentioned it. There's a lot of stigma around teenage pregnancy and planned pregnancy, especially among young people. So this is not something that they openly talk about. So because they don't openly talk about it, they don't get the right information. And they may not even go to the right place to get the correct information and advice. So there's also the stigma that surrounds this issue. Even the use of contraceptives, very few young people actually use contraceptives. If we did a random sampling or survey, we would actually find out that most young people are not even on contraceptives, but they are sexually active. So all those are some of the issues that are making it very easy for these young people to opt for unsafe abortion once they find out that they are pregnant. Yeah. Then I know.
Maybe I hear you, and what you're saying is actually true. But you intrigued me in your first submissions when you said the Termination of Pregnancy Act was established in 1972, and in Zimbabwe it was actually 1977. And maybe from just a legal basis, very quick one, in less than a minute, would you say there's really need for us to revisit these acts of parliament or these constitutional instruments to suit the modern day, or they are good as they are and every other generation should just follow that pattern?
I think one of the things that we all may be aware is that society is always evolving. There are always all these changes that happen. So it would be prudent actually to revisit some of these laws, especially the Termination of Pregnancy Act, just to understand what is now pertaining on the ground. What are the current trends around pregnancy? What are the issues that are affecting women and young women, so that then this law can be tailored towards the current situation. 72 is over what? 50 years? So much has happened. So much has happened. So it would be good to just revisit this law and see, and just ensure that it's actually responding to the current situation and status of women and young women. Yeah.
Interesting. I know my hosts might want to add something, or maybe a question. Maybe I can go on and on because I'm being intrigued. Yeah, this is a topic that I've been looking into, not just at country level. I've been looking at it from a perspective of region. And there's a lot of abnormalities that are there. I don't know, maybe Margaret, you can bring something, but also maybe Margaret, before you come in, I don't know if it's a myth or if it's actually correct information that's in the streets. And this might be going to the sister. to say, I've heard people say if you take an emergency contraceptive pill whilst you're ovulating, it's bound not to work. I don't know if that's true, but just think around that, and maybe if you get time to respond, you might tell us, is it true that if I take a morning after, or if a lady takes a morning after whilst she's already ovulated, that is bound to be working? I don't know how to, if it's a myth, if it's a fact, or it's the truth. Over to you, my host.
So I feel like that's very true. And then when we look at the topic itself, we're saying when contraceptives fail, and you get to find that a number of young people, I should say, a number of ladies, a number of young women, you get to find that, no, how am I pregnant? I took a morning after pill, but then we don't really get to know if you were ovulating, because at times you can't keep track, you're ovulating or not. So maybe before we even skip to any other question, Sister Martha, you can go ahead and just respond to us in a minute. Like, you can tell us what is that a myth, or it's actually something that's it's scientifically proven. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So, when you are ovulating, first of all, how does this emergency contraceptive work? It just makes the uterine walls, the inner part of the uterine where a fertilized ovum implants itself. It just makes that environment not conducive. So if you are indeed, and indeed, if you take it, and we know first of all that the emergency contraceptive, you're supposed to take it within 72 hours from the last time you had coitus. Yes. So now, what happens? It makes just the uterus to be somehow not favorable. If at all there's fertilization, meaning that it's not going to implant in the uterus. But if you are ovulating, we've heard that when you are ovulating, the egg may take 24 to 48 hours just moving from the fallopian tubes, like from the ovary where it's produced and its passage into the fallopian tube. So it could be true if you are ovulating and then you take the morning after, it may not work, because mostly it works in the uterine walls to make it less conducive for implantation to happen.
Great.
Interesting.
I'm learning. I'm learning. Elliot, I hope you've gotten that. And whoever is going to say that, please explain it to them to say, Sister Martha said, this is what happens. So thank you so much for that response, Sister Martha. So when we get to look at the same situation where maybe obviously when we take morning after pills, we are obviously preventing ourselves from getting pregnant. But then in a situation where I take a morning after pill and I'm ovulating and I get pregnant at the end of the day, as someone who is not ready to keep the pregnancy, obviously I'm going to resort to abortion. But then being someone again who doesn't have so much information, like Vesa mentioned, to say we have information gap, I choose to go for unsafe abortion. So Sister Martha, I would like you to just help us understand the consequences of unsafe abortion. Obviously, we know there's Dr. Mbuya, where we say certain things, we take certain drugs without really knowing or understanding the consequences that come when we practice the practice unsafe abortion. So please help us understand what the consequences are when we do that.
Thank you so much, Margaret. So as I said earlier on that this is a service that is only provided in a health facility, which has the recommended standards. So when I mean standards, it means it has to be free from infection, how you're conducting the procedure, whatever you use, it has to be free from infection. And then if you notice the danger signs, like if you conduct an abortion in a health facility, we always tell this person to look out for certain signs. For example, maybe heavy bleeding, changing a pad, maybe in less than 1 hour, you change 2, 3 pads. That's heavy bleeding, which needs medical attention. So if you are doing all those things in the community with Dr. Ambuya, just as you said, Margaret, they will not observe all those things that we look out for. They just do it for the sake of doing. And then the other thing that needs to be mentioned is that there's a specific stage of pregnancy that examination of pregnancy will be done. If it exceeds a certain stage, it cannot be done, meaning that there's a risk that this woman can bleed to death. So the consequences that we obviously have to look out for is issues of bleeding heavily that may lead to death, and then issues of introducing infection, because what you're using, you don't know what the things that you're inserting inside, you don't know what they have. They might introduce certain infections. And yes, when you know that a woman comes in with infection, there are a number of things that happen. The infection might also affect the uterus, and in the end, you might have this uterus removed. So the other consequence, of course, is infertility, and you have this uterus removed, and then yeah, this is not the end of life. Life goes on, and then there comes a time when you meet this perfect partner you get married to, and then you know what you did in your past, and then issues of infertility set in, and a lot of misunderstandings, and then maybe even divorce in the end happens. So I think those are some of the common consequences that we've seen as health providers that come as a result of practicing unsafe abortion.
Mm, that's interesting. When we look at these things, especially when it's a young person who's very, very scared, I should say, and we don't really have the information that we need at the end of the day, we definitely get to go for unsafe ways, not really knowing or understanding the consequences that come after we practice the unsafe abortion that we get to do. So I will go back to Ressa. She has been so quiet. It seems like she's not here with us, so I'm going back to her so that she can say something. Vesa, so I would like you to help us understand, you being an advocate, and obviously you speak on behalf of other people, and obviously you get to meet other people. They get to tell you their problems, and you just, advocate and whatnot. So I would like you to help us understand what the biggest barrier is, or the barrier that women face when trying to access legal abortion services in these health facilities.
Thank you, Margaret. I think some of them are the ones that are highlighted. One is the stigma. So the stigma is not just from the community, but then we also have, I'm sure Sister Martha would agree with me, we also have some health providers that stigmatize the women, especially the young women. The issue around judgmental service. So this young person comes in and she wants to access the service, but the environment itself is not conducive because this particular service provider is very judgmental. That really also creates a barrier, because then these young people are afraid to go and access the service. The second is lack of information. It's very difficult for one to access a service if they don't even know that that service is available. So that also is a barrier. If you don't have the right information, you are not going to get the right help. You're not going to access the right information. So the gap in information also creates a barrier. The other barrier is the actual service itself. It's not all health centers or hospitals that provide the service. So that also creates a limitation. You might find that maybe in that particular area, it's only one hospital, one clinic that provides the service. And so if these young people go to this particular one that doesn't provide the service, and they're told, oh, we can't, or the personnel that has been trained is not available, this then creates a barrier, because these young people then will take it that they can't access it anywhere else. And so it creates it creates a barrier. The other one is also access to contraceptives. I know Sister Martha has been talking about contraceptives, but then there's also barriers to accessing the same contraceptives. You'd find that maybe in a certain area, it's only one particular contraceptive that is available. That might not work well for every woman or every young person. So that also creates a barrier. So those are some of the barriers that make it difficult for young people to access safe abortions.
Great. That's very true. When you get to look at these barriers, and when you get to have conversations with young people, obviously they would tell you a number of things as to why they don't actually get to access these abortion services. So now, Vesa, before maybe you could rest your throat, I would like you to come back and just help us understand, like, you've spoken about these barriers that young people get to face, but then I would focus on information. So what do you think could be the best way young people can access information on self-abortion?
Thank you, Margaret. So one way is through the safe spaces. This is a platform that young people can freely go, not only to access the service, but also information. You know, this is a non-judgmental platform where young people can freely speak, they can freely ask the questions. So the safe spaces is one avenue. The second is through the different civil society organizations that are working around sexual and reproductive health. So organizations have different materials, IEC materials that are distributed in communities, that are distributed in different schools, whether it's tertiary or through different clubs that are established in schools of higher learning as well. So those reading materials also come in handy because it's not everyone who has the courage to go to a health center. So if they can actually access this information, they can read on their own, then they are able to know where to go. And then we also have organizations that have even advanced. They have online platforms, you know, they have gone as far as using social media to disseminate information. So that's a plus because a lot of young people use social media to access information. So that's another platform also that can be used to bridge the information gap. So the other avenue is through different dialogues that are conducted in the communities. So young people also should take the time and the interest to get to know the different structures that exist within their communities. If at all there are, for example, clubs, or maybe there's a particular office that they can go to access materials, reading materials or information, those platforms would be highly utilized by the young people. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this goes back to our young people watching this show. You've heard, Bess has mentioned a number of places, a number of platforms where we can actually get this information, especially on the services that are being offered at the health facility. And to be precise, we're talking about the safe abortion services. We don't want to have a number of deaths where young people are practicing unsafe abortion when information is right there. So what you can do is you can visit your nearest health facility. You can just, even if you don't want to access the abortion services, what you can just actually do is go to that facility, just ask for information. Who knows, maybe the information that you might get today, you might share it with the other person, and you'll be spreading information just like that. And to our online community, we haven't forgotten about you. You know, you I don't want our guests to crucify me, but you are our favorite viewers and our favorite audience, whereby you are there and you make this show happen, you make this show interesting. So you can send in your comments, you can tell us where you're watching us from, what you know about safe and unsafe abortion, the dangers of practicing unsafe abortion, and whatnot. So I'm going back to Sister Vesa. Sister Vesa, you mentioned the consequences that one might face when it comes to practicing unsafe abortion. But then there are times when we get to find that people choose to use safe ways of aborting. A young person has information on what safe abortion is, and it's time for me to access such a service, and I want to use the safe way of aborting, but I don't really understand what exactly I need to do at the end of the abortion. So I would like you to help us understand, as a health provider, what should one do after an abortion? Is it that when I have an abortion, I just have to go home and forget about it? Or maybe there are some things that I need to do afterwards?
Thank you, Margaret. So the service, it's termed as a comprehensive abortion care service. So when we say comprehensive, it's a package. So in this package, what do we start with? Of course, we start with counseling. It's not everyone who just comes for the service, and then it's an automatic thing that you're going to do the termination of the pregnancy. No, you need to cancel. And there are some cases you cancel someone, they listen, and then they go back home and keep the pregnancy. But for someone who has opted to have the pregnancy terminated, again, they go through another step of counseling, telling them what they expect after the abortion. So there are issues of mental health issues, what comes in this young lady's mind is, I've killed a human being. And then sometimes it haunts them. So you need to offer that counseling, and it's an ongoing counseling. It doesn't end there. In most of these health facilities, they've got mental health departments where such counseling is done. And then uh, the immediate do's and don'ts. Of course, I mentioned earlier that there are things that we ask them to look out for. Issues of a raised temperature. A raised temperature is not a good sign. It means that there's some infection that are setting and it will need to be treated. There are issues of heavy bleeding. If heavy bleeding is not controlled during an abortion, you can lose the life. So those are the things that you also emphasize that they should look out for, and immediately they see such signs, they need to come back to the health facility. And the other thing is issues of contraceptives, because we know that this young person is engaging in sexual intercourse. So you need to explain to them that it's always important to avoid another pregnancy. I've seen a number of young people when they come in, because they're in that stage, they're going through a lot, and they'll tell you that if I do this termination, I'll never have sex again. I'm going to abstain. But we've seen a number of young women coming back 6 months down the line after an abortion, they come back again pregnant. So we emphasize it's also a complete package, that this young person does not go back home without a family planning method. So always make sure that as they leave the health facility, they choose a family planning method that we are going to give to them. And of course, you need to explain what they should expect with this family planning method. The issues of side effects that happens when someone is in the early stages of taking this contraception, they need to know that those things will disappear with time. So I think that's a complete package that we give to this young lady who has had an abortion in a health facility.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope a young person who's watching this, should be a young woman or a young lady who's watching this, now has an idea of what exactly they can do after an abortion. I think this is where the dangers of unsafe abortion now comes in, because you don't really know what to do after you have an abortion. Worst of, it's an unsafe self-abortion, you have no idea. You are bleeding. What are you going to do? You are feeling your temperature is rising. What are you going to do? So in this case, it's very important to resort for a safe abortion, in the sense that even when you get to find yourself going through such experiences, you're experiencing certain things, you're definitely going to run back to the health facility and they'll be able to help you. That's the best part of the self abortion. So, looking at the time, it seems like time is running really quickly, and I feel like the conversation is just heating up, and we really need. I can see Madam Mesa has so much to share with us, and Martha has so much to offload, but it seems like time is not really with us, and I can see that this conversation can just go on and on, but we need to wind up so that we can make it easy for somebody else to watch it and just be able to contribute. So I'm going we're going to wind up, and I'm going to ask a last question to each one of you. I'm going to start with Vesa. So Vesa, we have mentioned a number of myths here, like something that really leads young women not to seek self-abortion services, and maybe just not getting these contraceptives that are being provided in our health facilities. So I would give you an opportunity to just mention one myth that stands out for you, that you've heard in your community or you've heard amongst people, and you've just maybe come across one myth that you've come across that stands out for you. I don't know if it's it's in a negative or positive way, but you'll help us with that same myth and how best we can debunk that myth. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. So in closing, I think the myth that is very pronounced is that abortion is illegal in Zambia. So I'm hoping that from this conversation, young people can be able to pick that safe abortion is legal, so long as it falls under the different circumstances that have been shared. And also, it's important that young people realize the consequences or the health implications that Sister Martha has stretched out. So it's good to be safe, and for you to be safe, please go to the right places to get the right information and the right service. Thank you.
Okay, and just to add on, yes, I think the other common myth. Oh, all right. Okay.
Yes, Sister Martha, you can go ahead.
Well, I was saying that the other myth that I think has gone around in the community is saying that when you have an abortion, you will never conceive again in your lifetime, of which it is not true. And the only safe way you can have this abortion is, of course, in a health facility where the required standards, and it's performed by a trained health personnel. You shouldn't expect to suffer infertility after uh, an abortion in a health facility.
Thank you so much. Sister Martha, before we go, you have given us so much information on how best young people can access these abortion services, and just how the consequences that are there when young people choose to go for unsafe practices. I would like you to just, as your last words, I would like you to give us the importance of seeking professional safe abortion services, and give us your call to action as a health practitioner. What call to action do you have for us as young people, young women to be precise?
Thank you. So the young people need to know that safe abortion services are there in most of these health facilities, and they are free to access them at any time. And these services are free of charge, and no one is expected to pay anything. And then I think my call to action is young women. We've always preached. I think for us, the preaching is about abstinence. We need to young women need to abstain. And then if you cannot abstain, please, contraception is free of charge in these health facilities. And if at all contraception fails to work due to various reasons, or if at all you just fall pregnant, please speak out, come to the health facility, ask for these services. They are provided free of charge. And please, the most important thing is to avoid the next crisis, like falling pregnant again. I think it's not right, especially when we have given the information that they need to know. So they just have to come to the health facility, whatever services they need to look for. There's always someone they can talk to. There's always a fellow peer educator at the health facility, and then there's always an adolescent focal person in most of these health facilities, which is their fellow youth. And I think it would make talking to their fellow youth, I think, quite easy. And yes, so it's just a call that all the youths, they need to make sure that they speak to someone, they come to the health facility to get the necessary information that they need on contraception, on safe abortion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This, I feel like this was a class and I was learning instead of being a host. I was learning from our guests. This has been a very fruitful discussion, and how I wish we can have a part 2 of this so that maybe we can go deep into most of the things that are on the ground, especially with young people. And it would be nice to just have a young person who just express what exactly is happening on the ground, being in the space where there is Vesa and Sister Martha. Thank you so much for this discussion. It has really been fruitful and impactful at the end of the day. And I just hope that each young person, a young woman, a young girl who is going to watch this show, they are going to pick 1 or 2 things and ensure that they go for the safe ways instead of the unsafe ways, because this information is just rich, and it's rich such that we can use it and save our lives at the end of the day. If you cannot save your life, you can save another person's life. So you can share this link to the show. Just tell a friend to come and watch the show and just learn 1 or 2 things. I just want to thank you all for making time to be part of this show. Thank you so much, Vesa, and thank you so much, Sister Martha, for being part of this show. Your contribution towards the show has meant so much to us as the youth platform. And not really forgetting our sign language interpreter, someone who has been fighting with the air since the start of the show. He has just been fighting. We want to say thank you so much to John for helping our friends out there, being part of the show. And obviously, John, please let them know that they can tell us what they think in the comment section, and we'll be able to read their comments and just hear their contribution. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to our online community. You guys are so amazing. Each and every time we come here, you are always there to respond, to ask questions, and to just be on top of things. Thank you so much. Until next time, it's a bye-bye from me and my guest. Bye-bye.